Heather Eiden for watercolor painting. This is our second session together, lesson 2. The last session we had together, we were working on different watercolor washes and different ways to make the background. As you can see here, we did a gradated wash, some salt effects, wax resist using a candle or a white crayon for the background. This was a flat wash. We had wet on dry, dry on wet, dry on dry, which is actually damp, a damp brush, not really a dry brush, and then wet on wet. So here we go. We're gonna go back into these watercolor washes. I'm starting to lightly sketch. So I was looking at this kind of a wabi-sabi still life where you can see the kind of, the idea of like beauty's coaxed out of ugliness. We have the carrots are kind of shriveling and the pear, but it still has its own beauty because it's got a lot of texture now and different colors happening as they're slowly fading away and looking earthy. So I'm going to come into, first of all, I wanted you to show this palette. I made this palette out of a jewelry box, and these are the watercolor tubes. Also remember, this is a great travel set you might want to get, and you'll be able to take it to parks this summer and that kind of thing. So the thing to remember about watercolor is that you need to go from light to dark. So for instance, I'm going to go in there with a little bit of a yellow wash, and I'm looking at this, here at this teapot that I inherited, family inheritance. So I'm going around it. I'm going to just try to highlight the background with some light washes, using a little bit of white in there, maybe get almost a turquoise kind of look, right? So last week I did a very simple little outline of this with a damp brush, and then I'm going back because I didn't like actually my lines, so now I'm going with opaque. The beauty of watercolor is you can use them as an opaque, a transparent, or semi-transparent, and there's like so much variety there. The only one thing you can't get is like with acrylics, it's permanent. This is not really permanent. You could change it at any time, which is also a benefit, right? You can continue to change it up. Okay, so I'm looking at these flowers here, and I'm gonna go in there. Basically, I put a little bit of wet there, and now I'm going in. Remember, that was wet on wet. So I wetted the area. So then if I'm gonna do a little bit of dry brush, there's a little bit more control with that, with doing working into a dry brush. And I gotta make sure to get the table behind it, otherwise it always looks like objects are floating in space if you don't lay down a table or a flat surface that the object is attached to. So that's an important thing to know about still life painting. So here, okay, this bowl is green. So now I'm coming into the wash that we did. This one was called Wax Resist, and we did a little either crayon or you can even, honestly, you can use a candle stick to do this. But look at how beautiful that is. You get like an illuminated type of look with the right, with being able to see the understructure of this painting, that background, which was the Wax Resist. So I'm gonna go a little bit darker into there, and so what I want you to do is find some objects that have personal significance to you in your home to make your still life, right? Because then it'll be more exciting for you to paint if you have a connection to your objects, a personal connection, and some kind of meaning there. Oh, do you see that? So that was wet into wet, and it crawls like a spider web. That's actually kind of a beautiful thing. And then your water and your paint is going to stop wherever your line. Do you see that? The water, it went like a waterfall down into that other area where it had already been wet. So it was, but you know what? That's the beauty of it, and work with it, right? Because that's going to make your painting exciting, is to have those little out of control areas. So I'm going with that carrot. I'm starting with the yellow, and then I'll go orange later. And then I said, please, make sure you include the table. So what happens if you don't? Your fruit basket is floating in space. You can say that in a funny way, right? If you're working with children, floating in space. Then they really understand what you're talking about. Like, there. Okay, so there. Now we go. Now, oh, I lost it here. Do you see that? So the table and the bowl have become one, but I didn't necessarily want that to happen. Okay, there's a problem here. Now this is where patience comes in. I have to let this dry before I go back and make that defining line underneath the bowl. Otherwise it's going to continue to spread and sprawl because now we're working wet on wet. I'm going to let this whole thing dry, and there you go. That's it for now. Next is going to be abstract painting with painting to music is our next lesson number 3. All right, so I look forward to seeing the still life paintings that you do over your samples, the 8 samples that you did in watercolor painting 1 with Heather Eiden. Thank you.